Welcome to another value-packed episode of the Customers Who Click podcast. Today's guest is James Shadd, the co-founder of Weetabix Startups, a boutique agency which specialises in working with fast-growing brands. Today we're talking about Facebook and Instagram advertising, and we'll be touching a little bit on PPC as well because it's quite related and relevant. I've been involved with Facebook ads myself with various companies, and it's always worked pretty well. Targeting is fantastic. The different ad sets and the creative you can use is really great. And retargeting is, of course, pretty much impossible to ignore as a marketer these days. And unfortunately, it's sometimes impossible to ignore as a customer as well. But anyway, I'll let James dive into the detail of Facebook advertising, the big mistakes people make, and of course, some of the misconceptions out there. Hey, James, how's it going?
Very well.
Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. Tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do? Why do you do it?
So I'm co-founder of a business called Weetabix Startups. We're the marketing agency for fast-growing brands, and we help businesses win and keep new customers as quickly and cost-efficiently as possible. Used to work for kind of big media agencies. That was my thing. So working with kind of big blue-chip clients like B&Q and Weetabix and Diageo, which was a lot of fun for a long while. Working with big budgets and kind of big lofty goals. But it grew harder to prove that you were really making a difference. And you could throw all kind of sophisticated measurement and econometric models at it. But often, for example, Weetabix, if you stopped advertising, they were still going to sell quite a lot of boxes of Weetabix anyway. And my head got turned by the startup world, and it really exciting to me, and decided that startups and fast-growing brands were a much more interesting prospect. Especially, I remember, so B&Q I used to work on, and we had a model that proved that actually advertising didn't really have much more of an effect than the weather. So actually building a weather machine was probably better than running ads. At that point, thought, probably time to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose with certain businesses like B&Q, if the weather's nice and you think, right, I'm going to do some stuff in the garden or whatever, your head instantly goes to like 2 or 3 brands probably, and that's probably like B&Q, Homebase, and a garden centre that's nearby. So and whichever one's closest, or maybe a preference you're going to go to. I can see how the weather simply just, makes such a huge impact on it. So what's a standard day look like for you at Weetabix Startups?
So always start the day with checking in on our client's business. So going through all the kind of Google Analytics and the Facebook reporting just to see how things are going and are we growing their businesses. Also check on our own business and make sure that our invoice is getting paid and all of those things, and leads are coming in. So basically, our own and our client's business. Then we have a daily team stand up. We've recently switched to Monday.com in lockdown. Bit of a random plug for Monday.com, and so far it's been quite good. Did resist for ages their software because they were spamming me on YouTube, and I thought, this does look good, but I think you need to look at your kind of advertising frequency.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Lose me as a potential customer.
I've seen Monday.com for probably a couple of years now, I think, mainly on Instagram. Ads just follow me there. Yeah,
but finally cracked. So we have our daily check-in and use Monday.com for all the tasks for the team. And then the day is either spent meetings with existing clients, but then a lot of what I do increasingly is kind of new business. And my business partner and I have kind of separated out that she is more focused on our current clients and I'm more focused on kind of finding new clients and growing the business. But yes. And then also random special projects probably come up. Like recently we've been working on improving the automation of our reporting, which is an important part to kind of improve our efficiency internally and make us kind of more trying to solve problems and less working through spreadsheets.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. So obviously we're here to talk a bit about Facebook and Instagram advertising.
Yes,
I'm going to leave this as quite an open question, but do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Facebook and Instagram advertising is forms a lot of what we do. It's not everything we do at WeGrow Startups, but it used to be that I was very much kind of a Google first in trying to solve client problems. So always thought about search is intent based, therefore it's a great place to start. However, kind of noticed that particularly for more premium brands, Google's inability to target by affluence, certainly in the UK, means that you don't necessarily always get the right traffic. So somebody searching for a particular product, you don't know what the affordability of that audience is. So therefore, Facebook and Instagram have much more powerful targeting capabilities and became, I think, much more useful and better performing for quite a lot of our clients. And therefore, we've kind of worked with that kind of platform in more detail. And I think it works particularly well for premium e-commerce brands, particularly those with kind of strong lifetime values, either through high average order value or high repeat rates. So businesses that really benefit from having a visual ad, either a video or an image, to really bring their product to life. And they're the clients that it works particularly well with from our point of view.
Yeah, I guess when you're putting the advertisement in front of someone, kind of interrupting their feed, it's got to stand out, hasn't it?
Exactly.
So yeah, good imagery, GIFs, video probably works really, really well.
And I guess it's less intent based because you are interrupting somebody's feed. But I'd say that particularly Instagram has become almost a replacement for kind of traditional magazine advertising. So your Instagram feed tends to be a kind of curated list of your interests and your hobbies. And therefore, the powerful algorithm allows you to target based on people's interests, and therefore you serve related ads to people's interests. Therefore, it's just like kind of magazine advertising of old, that actually when you're reading through a magazine, it was almost that the adverts were almost as interesting as the content itself. And I think Instagram has managed to replicate that experience.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that. I like that analogy actually about a magazine. Except it's kind of almost personalised, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Although I get targeted quite a lot by agencies for agencies, which is a kind of a new niche out there. But it is incredibly well targeted in that they know that I run an agency, so I'm applicable to be targeted.
Are there any common myths or misconceptions about Facebook and Instagram advertising? Do you get many objections to it from either clients or potential, leads who you kind of pitch it to? Yeah,
there is a belief that it is quite a saturated market, that either the CPMs are too high or that it's difficult to get cut through. And I think that's certainly in the US, CPMs can be very, very high. But if you are an e-commerce brand that can deliver globally, that there's lots of developing or markets which you can achieve much lower CPMs and still get the sale. So I think saying it's a saturated market, perhaps true in some sectors and some territories, but not the case if you have the ability to be global. And also if your product is strong enough, then you're always going to cut through. But on the other hand, I'd say it's also it's not a guaranteed success. So I think that's another misconception. On the other side of the coin is that people often come to us and say, right, we just need to do some ads. And ads might not be the solution to their problem. That actually, that looking internally at their business, at their site, I mean, you're a conversion rate optimization specialist, Will. So often that is the step that has to be taken before you start throwing money at advertising.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely an attitude of, let's get Facebook advertising set up, get AdWords set up, and our business will grow. And then, I think people just take it for granted that, pretty much they've just got to get, the right campaigns in place, and that's it. When you're right, quite, lots of businesses actually have problems with the actual website or the app. We were just talking before the podcast about my experience with Epic and Rockstar, but I won't start that rant again. Yeah, I suppose it's it's got to be thought through. You can't just throw money at the problem, basically. And I think a lot of people, once they've got their app or their website in place, they assume there is no problem because that problem was solved by having a website.
Yes, yeah, indeed. I like to say that startups are like leaky buckets, and that you should avoid pouring too much water in until you have blocked up those leaks.
Yeah, absolutely. Just sticking with the topic of myths, maybe, or misconceptions. Does it work? Does Facebook and even Instagram advertising work for B2B as well? If we look at different types of B2B, because obviously you've got the SaaS tools like Monday.com, but what about maybe enterprise level stuff or even agencies and services?
Yeah, I would say it definitely has the potential to work. I think you need a really strong call to action and a clear action point once the ad has been clicked on. So, is it B2B? Is it download a white paper? Is it sign up for a free trial? Is it sign up for kind of an email newsletter course, something like that? But I think it definitely has potential. I certainly think the targeting capabilities are getting there. I mean, they're not quite as strong as, say, LinkedIn, which has kind of excellent B2B targeting capabilities. But Facebook benefits from probably being about 5 times cheaper than LinkedIn from a cost per thousand point of view. And also Facebook and Instagram have nailed the clickable ad. It's almost a kind of an expected experience now in Facebook and Instagram that be prepared to click on an ad in a way that you never would click on a display banner or perhaps an ad in another platform.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't really know anyone who's actually making LinkedIn work very well. I've tried it at a previous company as well, and the costs were just really high. We didn't get much back through it.
So I was going to say, I think B2B needs to have a kind of a strong and clear funnel, and an understanding of what a lead is worth to you and what you're prepared to spend. And I think you may end up having to invest kind of larger budgets than perhaps a consumer product to make it work. But I still think it has potential.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think probably a lot of B2B offerings are going to be fairly high ticket value. Even if it's, a small monthly spend, but for 18 months or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So, your CPAs can be higher. So what are the first things you do when you get started with a new client?
So back to that point of the leaky bucket, always start with an audit. So looking at not only what they might have done previously on Facebook and Instagram or other channels, but also looking at their site, looking at what creative assets they have, looking at things like their email automation, looking at their CRM and kind of follow-up and welcome journey to new customers. So all of these things, also looking at their analytics and tracking. Is that set up? Is that set up properly? Is it recording what it should do? Really stress test them as a business and their online capabilities, because there's no point in sending traffic to something that's it's not going to work and is not set up for success. Then we work on kind of defining, what are the messaging and the USPs of the business are. What are we talking about? What are the best products to feature? What has the best margin? What products have the most differentiation? What products are the most popular? Things like that. And then we tend to, because a lot of our businesses are kind of early stage startups or brands with kind of less money to invest in creative, we talk about kind of minimum viable creative. So what can we use with your existing assets? We have the skills to kind of edit video and kind of upgrade what creative you might already have, but we tend to start with what people have got. We research audience. We look at whether we can create lookalikes based on existing customers or some other database list that the client might have. And then we set a budget and also understand what the realistic targets are. So, what is the lifetime value of a customer? How much are we prepared to pay to win a new one? So that tends to be the process. So lots to do before we go live. Perhaps in the very start, when I started running the business, we were guilty of saying yes to a client and moving a bit too quickly. But now we like to take our time a little bit, still moving fast, but making sure that we've got all our ducks in a row before we go live, and that we have the best chance of success.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you get questioned at all about wanting to look into things like CRM as well? Do you ever get people saying, well, you're the Facebook agency, why do you need that?
No, because I think we position ourselves as a marketing business in the whole. It tends to be that the majority of our work we do on Facebook and Instagram because it is such a powerful tool. But no, and we develop kind of trusted relationships with our clients, and they trust our skills, and it's either our skills or we get partners in to help if it's things that we can't do. But yes, it rarely faces an objection. But yeah, because we're there ultimately to help them grow. And if we spot that CRM is the barrier that holding back that growth, then they're happy to kind of let us help with that.
Yeah, that's good. That's kind of ideal for any agency, really. If you've got your core piece of work, but the client is happy to take into account other suggestions in other places. Budget wise, do you have any particular method for working out what a target CPA should be? Is it like a ratio based off LTV, or does the client simply say, I am happy to spend this amount of money?
Yeah. So there's a formula. I don't know where I came across it, but it's always kind of stood me well. But the CPA to LTV should be between 3 to 5. So your CPA is 3 to 5 times less than your LTV. And I think that's generally accepted in the startup community as an acceptable and profitable way of growing with that kind of ratio. However, some businesses don't know what their LTV is or what it's likely to be. So you often have to kind of make some judgments or accept that your first purchase might not be profitable. And there is some clients that we know that will have a strong repeat rate, but we accept that first purchase that we may just break even in terms of CPA versus the price of the first purchase. But we know that they'll come back a second and third time, and we won't have to pay for them.
Yeah, I do think it's something a lot of people do need to think about and consider. The fact that you aren't just paying for this single purchase. Ideally, you're paying for this first purchase, and then you're going to start building a relationship with that customer, and they're going to come back again and again and again, and hopefully you don't have to pay anything for those repeat visits.
Exactly.
But I do think a lot of people focus on making sure that first purchase or sign up is as profitable as possible, which a lot of the time in my experience, is what I've seen is you end up going down the cheaper traffic routes. You get misled by certain metrics, like using CPIs instead of CPAs.
Yes.
And then, when people aren't focusing on that lifetime value, they don't realize that all those super cheap people you bought through a CPI campaign or whatever haven't actually gone anywhere after that first step.
Yeah, exactly.
So if someone wanted to start running ads for the first time, what are a few things that you'd suggest to them to make sure they get in place straight away?
So number one on the list is get your analytics and tracking sorted out. So get a Facebook pixel. So implement that on your page or your app. So it has the ability to measure what traffic is doing once it has arrived there. And then I think once you have that in place, defining a valuable action. So in our business, we talk about valuable actions. So these are things which indicate a customer is a good prospect, but isn't necessarily the full purchase. So often with the budgets that we're dealing with, especially in kind of testing phase, we don't have enough money to kind of statistically prove that we're driving purchases, but we can take a step back and look at a valuable action like a lead or an add to basket, or somebody has signed up in app and target towards that action. So something that's happening frequently enough that you've got good data, but is also a really good sign of intent. So more than an install, but perhaps less than an in-app purchase, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of getting that the micro conversion, I guess, but just enough steps into the process and towards the final goal that you'd be pretty confident.
Exactly, because you can fall in both ways. So some people just kind of optimize towards traffic, and that's often you get kind of junk traffic or junk installs. These aren't valuable potential customers. But then the other side of the equation is actually if you try to optimize towards purchases, especially if you're a high value item, you don't get frequent enough data to prove if anything's working. Therefore, you need something kind of in between to kind of work to.
Well, I think actually, thinking about it, when I was at Readly, the magazine subscription app, kind of Netflix for magazines, we worked out the minimum number of magazines someone needed to read to indicate that they were highly likely to convert to a paid subscriber. And I can't remember how many it was off the top of my head. It wasn't too many. It was only about 3 to 5. But there was also a value we had to place on those, because obviously if you're out and about and you're physically buying the magazines, each of those has a price tag. So we need to make sure that the magazines they read were worth more than the price of the subscription. Which is why when we ran those cheap CPI campaigns on a certain magazine, weekly magazine, we realized that actually in the during the length of the trial, they couldn't read enough of those magazines, new editions of those magazines, to see the value of the subscription.
Yeah.
Because even though it was a weekly magazine, so they'd get, at one stage we did 30-day free trials, so they would get 4 of those magazines, but they're only about £1 each, I think.
Right.
And if the subscription's $9.99, why would someone subscribe? So we were looking at the people who were reading, I guess, what I would call proper magazines, to hit that, £9-10 in value. And that would be the indication that we were happy they would either convert at the end of the trial or at some point in the future. So that's what we were happy kind of optimizing to.
Yeah. So for an e-commerce client, we tend to optimize certainly the prospecting activity. So that's getting new customers to the site. We optimize towards add to cart or initiate checkout, because we know that they won't necessarily buy on that first visit, but we need a definite sign of intent. So somebody adding to cart or getting to the initiate checkout stage of the journey is a good enough sign that they are a likely customer.
Yeah, well, actually, I was talking to the analytics lead for Pizza Hut in one of the previous podcasts, and he was talking about, so in terms of optimization on the site, not worrying too much about those top of funnel people who haven't actually viewed a product, because you can optimize towards getting people to view a product, but if they're not doing that already, they haven't got much motivation. It's not very high intent. Whereas if you optimize for the people who've got the products in their baskets, it's much, much more likely that they are going to complete that purchase, either by you doing some optimization or by bringing them back at a later stage.
Yes, exactly. I forget the start of this question was, somebody doing Facebook for the first time. I had one other point was around targeting, and I read a good quote that targeting on Facebook is a bit like salt. So use just enough, but not enough to spoil the dish. Facebook actually benefits from having slightly larger audiences where it's got a bit more rope to play with, and optimize towards your goal. So if you're too narrow and too focused with your audience, you can kind of mess with Facebook's ability to optimize. Whereas if you're in danger of going too broad on the other side of the equation. But targeting, just enough.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense. You don't want to be too strict with it and tell Facebook exactly who it should be targeting, because you might be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you've probably kind of touched on this already in those answers, but what are the big or most common mistakes you see in Facebook and Instagram strategies?
Yeah, so back to my point around not enough data. So people making decisions and people dismissing performance when just not enough data has been gathered. You need. So Facebook talks about kind of like per ad set, 25 to 50 conversion actions per week for it really to perform well and optimize towards that conversion action. But also you can use like kind of statistical significance calculators to, are we really seeing a difference between kind of our test A and our test B? I think so. Not enough data and not allowing it to run sufficiently long to see that data as well. So making judgments too early, and also tinkering too much. So sometimes I think making obviously like adjusting when there are fatal errors and seeing when things definitely aren't working, but then I think there is value to letting things run sometimes and getting enough data. And then the other thing is, not valuable actions. So optimizing towards something like installs or traffic, which is you're just getting the wrong people to site, people who are just willing to click and willing to install, but not willing to do anything when they get there.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that earlier point around, once someone's got that app in place, they assume that's job done on that side. So as long as they're getting installs, that should solve the problem. And they're not looking at that, what is the actual goal that benefits the business?
Facebook is a bit like the Terminator, and it is relentlessly focused on one goal, and that's the one goal that you set it. And if you set it towards traffic or install, it will find people as cheaply as possible who are willing to go to your site or install your app. And they're not necessarily the right people for you.
You can run different campaigns with them, can't you? You can do more kind of brand campaigns, potentially to get those clicks and then retarget them with more direct campaigns, I suppose.
I always like to it depends on your budgets. I think the lower the budgets, the more you want every pound to work doing something positive for your brand, and that's people taking an action. I think as you grow, that you can afford to spend a little bit more towards the top of the funnel, and getting people aware of your brand and increasing brand awareness and consideration. But at the start, I like to say people don't have a brand if they don't have a business. So you need to get the sales in before you build the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think or know if any big trends are coming up for the next sort of 12 months?
Well, one of them is quite immediate, and I think we touched on this just before the podcast, that so CPMs at the moment, so cost per thousand, so the cost of advertising on Facebook and Instagram is far less than it has been because of coronavirus. So coronavirus has seen, I think, a lot of advertisers, especially big advertisers, withdraw their spends. And Facebook and Instagram, the ad platform is essentially a kind of an auction marketplace. So if there's less demand, then costs go down. So, and at the moment, costs are massively deflated because there are fewer advertisers in the market. And also, I think there's higher supply. So there's more people spending more time on social media. Therefore, it's kind of a perfect time to advertise if your business can still do business. I think it's a great time to take advantage of those lower CPMs. And I don't know how long it will continue for, but yes, it's a good time to advertise if you can.
Yeah. Do you think, are you expecting to see those CPMs kind of jump back up to where they were, or do you think it will take, maybe 9 to 12 months to actually get back to the levels they were at?
I think they talk about different kind of ways the economy may bounce back, like different letters and a W and a U or a J. And I'm not sure what letter it is, but I think it will be a slow road back. I don't think there's going to be an immediate jump back in to, all the big advertisers will suddenly turn on their spends again. I think it will be much like the economy, it will be a gradual, incremental thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Another potential trend is potentially ads in WhatsApp. So obviously Facebook and Instagram own WhatsApp as well as a platform. And recently I think the founders of WhatsApp who sold to Facebook left the company. So I think they've been left to run WhatsApp as a separate entity, and left allegedly because of Facebook's intention to add advertising to the platform. So ads on WhatsApp could be coming at some stage, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as Facebook bought it, the clock started ticking. Everyone's been expecting it for years. I'm slightly surprised it's taken this long.
Yes.
And I know, there have been some privacy issues, and Facebook claimed that WhatsApp doesn't share data, I think.
Yes. I think it lost a court case on that, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the number of people who say, I had a chat with my friend on WhatsApp, a call or messages, and suddenly advertisements appeared. It's, obviously it could just be interest based. If you're thinking about that, you've probably shown behavior elsewhere that Facebook can use for targeting, which is also kind of potentially where Facebook could go with it. So instead of putting ads in, they could actually just use it as that a source of data. I suppose which is worse for the consumer, basically having all your messages and calls read in order to then give you a better advertising experience, or to actually have the ads in WhatsApp. Imagine having to watch a 15-second video ad before you can make a phone call.
Oh, God.
I'm not sure that go down too well.
Yeah, or share a funny video in a WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
There's always talk about, is Facebook listening to me? Is it using what I'm saying to target advertising? And I think there is a degree to which it's psychological. As you said, people are in market, they're interested in something, they've probably been searching for it, they've been doing other things which indicate interest, or somebody in their friendship group has. So I think that's how Facebook does a lot of its targeting, is kind of through networks and finding people like the people who show interest. So I think that's how Facebook can sometimes appear to be targeting people based on conversations. But I did read an article once that said that actually the processing power required to constantly monitor people's conversations and mine that for data was just infinitesimally impossible to track, and that it's highly unlikely that it's happening, but you never know.
Yeah. And any other trends you see? I know chatbots have been talked about for a while now, and I think they became didn't become a massive thing. They became really, really popular with marketers, I think, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I feel like that interest has died down a bit. And actually, I'm surprised how many Facebook groups I've been in that have been dedicated to chatbots, like ManyChat or just support groups on how to build them and stuff. And actually, I can't remember the last time I saw a decent chatbot or actually engaged with one.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's been a kind of a big trend coming up, but whether it failed to prove its value, whether it was genuinely kind of helping. So, for example, like dealing with sales objections, it's about thinking about why would you use it, and what's it doing that a landing page or something else could do. Is it adding more friction, or is it removing barriers? And I guess it hasn't been clear enough that it has completely removed barriers without adding friction. Otherwise, I think we'd be seeing more of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen the odd one used well. I think there was a startup that did something to do with mortgages. I can't remember if it was like a remortgage site or something. I'm pretty sure they used a chatbot on their homepage, basically as a lead gen tool. You'd answer all the questions as they came through, and then it would say, right, to get your quotes, give us your email address. But I think they did it really well. Yeah,
I think there's a danger of doing it for the sake of doing it, versus where there's a clear benefit and it is adding value.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any pet peeves when it comes to marketing, either as a marketer or a consumer?
Probably as a marketer. Relates to Google rather than Facebook and Instagram, but so people who running Google brand ads. So, for example, when you search for a brand and the ad appears for that particular brand at kind of the top of the search listings, people click on that ad and then go on to buy something. Kind of other marketers who try and claim that that's genuinely incremental to the business. People are searching for the brand for a reason because they've found about it in some other way. And that's often through Facebook and Instagram advertising. So claiming that search is working because branded search is working, is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And then also retargeting. So people who visited the site, obviously they're highly likely, or they're much more likely than a random person to come back and buy again. And retargeting is a great way of getting them to come back. But trying to claim that every sale that retargeting drove back to the site was genuinely incremental, and kind of every pound you get back is a genuine increment to the business is I think a bit misleading, and that a business really needs to be out there and prospecting and finding new people, and not just relying on retargeting people who've already come to their site.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, retargeting doesn't grow your business, does it? It doesn't grow the levels of traffic coming to business. It's just bringing people back. Just touching on branded search quickly, do you think it has its place? Like, is it a good strategy brands should take? Should almost every brand be bidding on their own brand terms, or Well,
We
yeah.
tend to use it with our clients as a defensive mechanism. So it's basically to dissuade competitors from bidding on the brand. Soon as you are paying to appear on your own brand, you make the auction pretty unsustainable for competitors. Their quality scores will be much lower than you. Their cost per click will be much higher. It won't make any kind of economic sense for them to bid on your brand. So used in a defensive capacity, very sensible. Also, if you have an ambiguous brand name, which some people do, some people don't necessarily appear at the top of the organic rankings for their own brand, or there are variants of your brand name, or where organic might suffer. But it tends to be defensive rather than kind of aggressive.
Yeah, well, I worked for Yubico, which I doubt anyone listening to this podcast would be able to spell correctly first time. So I imagine there's, I guess it's not exactly brand search, but you're basically, you're picking on those misspellings, I guess, to try and do brand search.
Huawei as well. It's probably one that should definitely be buying on variants of how to pronounce their brand name.
Yeah. So do just final bit on brand search, just because I'm interested. You mentioned quality score will be lower and costs will be higher. Is that something that kind of Google basically punishes people for? So if you're saying, well, you're bidding on this brand's name, that it's their name, we're going to give them priority, and you're being punished.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it uses lots of different things to take into account, but one of the main things it looks through is click-through rate. So if you're searching for Adidas and Adidas appears in the as a paid ad, 30-40% of people will click on that ad rather than the organic listing. If Nike were to appear underneath Adidas, a far fewer percentage of people will click on that ad, and they will have a lower quality score, and therefore in the auction they'll have to bid higher to get a click-through. Google essentially does punish you for being irrelevant, and that relevancy is usually judged by click-through rate.
Oh, okay, but you in theory you can still be cheaper than the brand if you have the better advert and you get the better clicks.
Yeah, but if somebody's, Google is an intent platform. If you're searching for a particular brand, you're pretty much likely to click on that brand. Unless the I don't think I've seen an example of search copy so good that it will disrupt your journey from wanting to go to a particular brand.
Yeah, I think the two examples I'm thinking of just off the top of my head are a lot of the time with SaaS, you see brands bidding on their competitors with ads that say better than this company. Yeah. Or are you looking for this company alternative?
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know the company that you've searched for very well, you might be tempted to actually click those ads and take a look. And I think the other areas actually are probably the voucher space and gambling.
Yeah.
Gambling, because essentially a lot of gambling sites are very, very similar. Similar games, similar bonuses and everything. So if you can bid on your competitor term with a better bonus, that could work very well for you, although it's very, very expensive.
Yes. Yeah. So you will always be more expensive, I think, than the brand themselves. But if you can make it work for your CPA, if your conversion rate on your site is good enough, then it can work. It's an interesting area. And I think, using other people's brand names in your search ads, I think is technically forbidden by Google. And there have actually been some interesting court cases. I think Interflora and M&S Flowers are in an ongoing court battle on branded search. Yeah, every time I look it up, a different one of them has won an appeal, and they keep on appealing against each other. So check it out.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I might have to look up that up just to see what the arguments there are, actually. Because you're not, well, I mean, as far as I'm aware, you're not really infringing on any IP or anything just by mentioning a brand. But I'm not a lawyer, so...
Yeah.
Is there a marketing tactic or channel that you just kill off completely? Like one that you would just, I don't know, either you don't like it as a marketer or you think it's massively overhyped or potentially as a consumer?
Yeah, so I think retargeting, I've mentioned it once already from a marketing point of view, but as a consumer, retargeting when it is too frequent, or when it goes on for too long, or for when you've already bought something and you're like, why are you retargeting me? I've already bought this. Use better targeting criteria. But yes, there is a good, I mean, I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but there is a good correlation between the rise of the use of retargeting, I think in like the noughties into the kind of the tens, and the rise of ad blockers. So people were, I think, so fed up of being spammed around the internet by products that they'd looked at, that they downloaded ad blockers. So I think retargeting has its place, but it's I think a privilege, not a right, to do it, and you need to do it. Need to do it well.
Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean about, you leave a website, you go to a site that has several ad spots on it, and they are all for that one website that you visited, and that's all you see for like a week. Yeah, really, really annoying. And I suppose you're right. It's not necessarily the fact that there are adverts there. It's the fact that you're seeing the same advert in every spot for such a long period of time. That's actually probably what annoys people more. Yeah, I won't go into ad blockers actually, but yeah, I could probably go on a bit of a rant about why they've been necessary, but I won't. I will. We'll crack on.
Fair enough.
Well, but actually, that is the end. That was the final question. Been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Some really, really interesting stuff about Facebook there. If people wanted to get hold of you, how would they do that?
So my email is james@wegrowstartups.co, not .com. And the website is wegrowstartups.co. Or just find me on LinkedIn. It's James Shad, SCHAD. But yes, reach out any way you can.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Lovely. Thanks, Will.
Super stuff there from James. As we heard, Facebook and Instagram gives marketers the opportunity to reach out there and find the audiences that they want to sell to. With PPC, you're relying on people searching for your product or some more broad terms around your industry. And of course, the buying intent there is really strong. But the ability to put beautiful product imagery in front of people who have those relevant interests is incredibly powerful. While you do need to get your targeting right, you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to be too granular. Facebook's really good at working out who your buyers are, what they look like, and will target them efficiently based off the targeting you've put in. But obviously, you can't just go and say, I want everyone in the UK. Facebook's pretty easy to use as an acquisition marketer, but it's not a guaranteed success. You do need to get your messaging right, your imagery right. You've got, quality imagery works. There is a bit on the targeting as well, but you also need to make sure your website and tracking is set up properly. That's something that comes up again and again on this podcast. Tracking is so important. As with all marketing, if your funnel isn't set up correctly and you don't know what's going on in there, you don't know what's working, you don't know how to properly optimize. That's all for today. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. And if you've got any questions about Facebook and Instagram advertising, please send them over to will@customerswhoclick.com. In the next episode of the podcast, I'll be speaking with Lauren Mayer of Kickbox. We'll be talking about deliverability, inbox placement, and keeping your email campaigns healthy and effective. But until then, keep those customers clicking.